First up this evening, the Office of the Contractor General has recommended that the police and the Director of Public Prosecutions conduct an investigation into the awarding of contracts by the St. Ann Municipal Corporation and the constituency office of the Member of Parliament, Lisa Hanna.
The recommendation was contained in the OCG's report on the matter that was tabled in the House of Representatives on Tuesday. TVJ's Anthony Lugg reports.
The investigation into the awarding of contracts by the St. Ann Municipal Corporation and Member of Parliament for South East St. Ann, Lisa Hanna, began in 2015. Fast forward to 2017. After 2 years of investigations, Contractor General Dirk Harrison has referred the case to the Director of Public Prosecutions, DPP. But why? In the report, the OCG recommended that the authorities investigate whether the decision of Ms. Hanna to propose the awarding of contracts to 12 persons affiliated or associated with the People's National Party, PNP, gives rise to a conflict of interest. The OCG wants to probe to determine whether Ms. Hanna willfully neglected the performance of her duty and misconducted herself by making recommendations for the award of government contracts, and if this amounted to an abuse of the public's trust by acting fraudulently. The report names several persons and also recommends that all councillors in the St. Ann Municipal Corporation be investigated following allegations of the receipt of monies from contractors and facilitators who received contracts. He has also recommended that a criminal investigation be conducted to determine whether well-known businessman Richard Lake, a close associate of Ms. Hanna, interfered or committed an act of obstruction during the course of its investigation. The Contractor General alleged that Mr. Lake persuaded a woman identified as Joan MacDonald to make a false statement and to mislead his office. Mr. Harrison has also recommended that a criminal investigation be conducted in all 53 contracts awarded by the constituency office and the municipal corporation. Anthony Lugg, TVJ News.
And TVJ News caught up with Lisa Hanna for a response. Ms. Hanna said the voluminous nature of the OCG's report, having over 500 pages, means her reaction will not be coming soon.
I intend to read it cover to cover. I am not guilty of anything. So let me read it, and then I'm very happy to discuss it in the press.
But we got that you was referring to the DPP. What did you get from it?
Have you read the report? Have you read the report?
Not in entirety.
Well, read the report.
What have you got from it so far?
Read the report. I'll be happy once I'm finished to speak with the press.
Okay.
All right?
The parliamentary opposition abandoned the sitting of the House on Tuesday amidst efforts to have the National Identification System NIDS bill withdrawn. The bill was one of two matters discussed, but it was the NIDS bill that got MPs from both sides heated. TVJ's Herman Green reports.
It was a fiery discussion in Parliament about the NIDS bill, forcing the Speaker of the House, Colonel Charles Sr., to call a 20-minute recess to calm tempers. During the break, the opposition called a press briefing explaining their stance on the NIDS bill, which had 268 amendments between both houses.
The Prime Minister moved that the matter be considered at a later date. We were not permitted, as the standing orders provide for, either to consider the Prime Minister's motion, which we think the matter is of such urgency that the matter needs to be considered today, and or to consider our position, which is simply that the bill should be withdrawn and referred to a joint select committee.
For the opposition leader, the more the bill is scrutinized, the more flaws and issues are being identified.
The bill is extraordinarily intrusive. I don't think most Jamaicans understand that they're going to be required to make their iris scan available, to have their toe print, palm print, footprint, their vein pattern captured and installed in a database. We have no understanding of the protections of this database.
But with the government having a 3-seat majority in Parliament, the opposition has virtually no chance of stopping the bill from being passed. In spite of that reality, Dr. Phillips says the opposition will not back down in its effort to get a better bill.
We are saying we are prepared to have dialogue with all the groups that feel as strongly as we do and to devise some collective action if there is no positive response to the government to what we believe is a reasonable position that we have put.
In light of their stance on the issue, the opposition said they saw no reason to return to the sitting, leaving Gordon House shortly after. Herman Green, TVJ News.
In the meantime, deliberations continued late into the evening as the House of Representatives continued the amendments that were made in the Senate to the National Identification Bill. Our reporter Janella Precious is still in Gordon House and now joins us live with the very latest. Janella?
Thank you very much. Well, a dramatic turn of events here at Gordon House, and I say dramatic because a short while ago, the Prime Minister, the government passed the amendments to the NIDS bill. That was after a 20-minute recess, but that 20-minute recess turned into 1 hour and 7 minutes. The House resumed without the opposition to the moment where the Prime Minister approved, or the House rather, approved the amendments.
The concurrence of the House, the acceptance of the amendments from the Senate.
Hear, hear, hear.
Those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? None. There's have it.
Now, we have been trying to get comments from some of the human rights organizations. They are present here. I don't think anybody saw this coming because before that bill was passed, the Prime Minister spoke to wanting to have common consensus on this NIDS issue. There is no doubt that in the coming days, there will be lots of discussion. There are also concerns about whether or not the standing orders were observed with the government passing that NIDS bill. So what is expected to happen now? That bill will go to the Governor General and it will be passed into law. Now, Parliament is continuing as we speak. The Prime Minister is making a statement on the state of the roads due to the rain. We are now... Well, I am actually standing by to speak to one of the human rights activists. Well, she is not. We're live, and everybody is a little taken back by this announcement, by this sudden announcement. So there's lots of discussion here outside Parliament, and as it continues to develop, we will bring to you live coverage here and we will try to get as many reactions as possible. Again, the government, they've passed the amendments to the NIDS bill. The human rights activists present in the House, they are a little puzzled as to how this could have occurred. They were hoping that there would have been more discussion on the issue, but that did not happen tonight. The Prime Minister made that announcement to an empty opposition side, the opposition leaving immediately after the press conference, which was convened during the 20-minute recess. Again, that recess by the House Speaker did not, it took more than 20 minutes. It actually took 1 hour and 27 minutes. The House resumed shortly after 27 past 6. So we will throw back to the studio. Helene Coley-Nicholson, just your brief comments as to what just took place. Many persons are a bit stunned by the happenings here. Just your quick reactions.
Janella, it was a very curious day, and it just got curiouser and curiouser. What we saw was the Prime Minister passing the bill and taking advantage of the absence of the opposition. The opposition had earlier attempted to move a motion, and apparently everyone was in some confusion, well, certainly on the government side and the Speaker, in some confusion as to whether the motion could properly have been taken. The opposition's motion was for the bill to be withdrawn and put before a select committee of the Parliament. And that resulted in the suspension of the sitting for an inordinately long time. Had the motion been taken at the time, then the opposition would have succeeded in forcing the withdrawal of the bill. When the government came back, the opposition was absent. And the Prime Minister, having said that best practice would have dictated that everyone be given an opportunity to review the bill before having it debated or discussed on the floor, proceeded to pass the bill. Now, I say it got curiouser and curiouser because my reading of Standing Order 60 suggests that the Prime Minister ought to have put each amendment clause by clause to the House, even though the opposition was absent. The wording of Standing Order 60 says Senate amendments should be considered clause by clause. That didn't happen. The bill was simply put whole scale. We were told that the imprisonment clause had been withdrawn, and by acclamation, the bill was passed.
Your reaction to how it unfolded tonight?
I feel let down by both the opposition and the government. I think that a lot of Jamaicans also feel let down. I think that persons expected that out of respect for the principle of democracy, we would have as citizens been given an opportunity, notwithstanding the fact that the Prime Minister has said that opportunities were given. It doesn't, just to see the number of persons who are coming out from so many different sectors of society requesting respectfully that an opportunity be given for us to understand something which is going to so fundamentally affect us in the way we live our lives. That was the simple request of the Prime Minister. And of course, if we live in a democratic society where, you know, our parliamentarians represent us, then when we ask for this with such a resounding, unified voice, then the expectation is that it would have been heard.
Thank you so much, Ms. Helene Coley-Nicholson, speaking to us here. And of course, like I said, there are plenty other persons from human rights organizations here. We've been trying to get comments from them. Of course, like I said, also, this will generate discussion right throughout the week. If you're just joining us, the government has passed the amendments to the NIDS bill. I'm Janella Precious reporting from Gordon House. It's back to studio.
Thank you, Janelle. Of course, Helene Coley-Nicholson there from Lawyers Christian Fellowship, one of the groups which has raised concern about the legislation. We'll be following this story, and of course, we'll have more updates from Janelle as soon as they are available. Our top story this evening: Contractor General recommends the DPP and police conduct a criminal investigation into the role the Member of Parliament for St. Anne Southeastern, Lisa Hanna, played in the award of contracts by the St. Anne Municipal Corporation. Still ahead, the Prime Minister Andrew Holness defines the boundaries of the cockpit country and says no mining will be allowed in the area. And in business news, a manufacturer calls for trade barriers to incentivize the sector. We'll be right back.
Environmentalists appear to have won the battle to prevent mining from destroying the cockpit country. Prime Minister Andrew Holness, in a statement to the House of Representatives this afternoon, outlined the boundaries of the cockpit country protected area. He also declared that no mining will be permitted. TVJ's Vashon Brown has more.
The Holness administration faced criticism from environmentalists for failing to respond within 30 days to a petition about preserving the cockpit country. The petition obtained the required 15,000 signatures. Now, in Parliament on Tuesday, Prime Minister Andrew Holness announced the areas to be designated as the boundary of the cockpit country and of the cockpit country protected area. He said Cabinet had to take into account a number of factors, including the rich biodiversity, hydrology, as well as important historical and cultural sites.
Mr. Speaker, the area to be protected will include existing forest reserves, significant hydrological and ecological features, and cultural and heritage sites. This area, which comprises approximately 74,726 hectares, will be referred to as the Cockpit Country Protected Area and will be protected under specific legislation as advised by the Attorney General.
In relation to the water resources, Mr. Holness says the Water Resources Authority identified and advised the Cabinet on hydrological features within the environs of the cockpit country which required protection. So the Prime Minister says caves in the northeast, in the Rio Brenner watershed, and in the northwest have been included in the area to be protected.
with regard to the forested area, the Cabinet has decided to extend the existing cockpit country, that is what we just described as a core, so we are extending it for the protected area, to the Litchfield-Mattison Run, which is this area. Litchfield-Mattison Run, this area. You notice that the dark green represents close broadleaf forest.
In relation to the historical and cultural sites within the area, Mr. Holness says the Ministry with responsibility for culture and the Jamaica National Heritage Trust have advised that sufficient safeguards exist under the Jamaica National Heritage Trust Act to protect the cultural and historical sites and artifacts in the area. The government says it will also develop a comprehensive management plan for the cockpit country. The plan, Mr. Holness says, will be subject to cabinet approval, following which it will be tabled in Parliament. As it relates to mining,
the government is declaring that no mining will be permitted in the cockpit country protected area. In this regard, the Mining Act and any applicable existing mining licenses will have to be amended to close these areas to mining.
Vashon Brown, TVJ News.
Heavy rains lashed sections of Portland yesterday, causing some schools in the parish to close their doors. As TVJ's Vashon Brown now reports, several roads were also affected.
Heavy rainfall caused misery in Portland on Monday. In fact, this bus, we're told, ran off the road in Manchonil. People looked on, some tried to help. This is what the Folly Main Road looked like. Schools too were badly affected. In the case of Port Antonio Primary School, the campus was flooded. We spoke with the school's principal, Kenisha Davis-Williams.
The corridors were full of water. We had instances where children could not move from their classes to the restroom. So we had to send messages out to our parents using SMS and Facebook, and we called in a few to ask them to pick up their children.
Norwich Primary and Portland High also had to close early on Monday because of rising water. People in Hart Hill, West Portland, among the worst affected. Fabian Smith says he lost up to 500 blocks and other items needed to carry out repairs to his house.
Yesterday the rain fall, gully come down, we have a lot of blocks and some sands over there, sand and gravel, and the water just come and take away everything.
The gully needs to be properly cleaned, and they need to make like some basket with some stone basket alongside the river, so whenever the river come down, it does not dig up the river any deeper, right? Because that is the problem. The more it digs up, the more flooding we get.
The residents say they brace for headache every time it rains heavily.
From yesterday, the water running from up there coming down. Bare water, bare mud, stick, stone and everything. But if we can get the water to come out of my yard, it's no problem.
Pamela Hendricks says the water that entered her house was knee-high. She was trapped inside for hours.
It started from the night, but we don't watch the water, so we don't come out and go even in there. So we couldn't come out of the yard for go now, so I have to stay down there. So it started around say 12 o'clock. Right through.
My shoes, they were all coming out, and me have to grab all 2 pair of my slippers gone. So if you look over there, you see one of them in the water, how it come out. So me not even bother take up that. Yes, so me have to grab my shoes, them and I throw them in, and 2 pair of my shoes, 2 pair of my slippers then gone.
In the meantime, the National Works Agency says it has been in the parish clearing blocked roads. The agency says there continues to be heavy rainfall, especially in eastern Portland. Vashon Brown, TVJ News.
With some persons still accessing basic healthcare services at hospitals instead of health centres across the island, hospital officials are speaking about the impact it's been having on them. Space and staffing are 2 areas of concern for the hospitals we visited. TVJ Shamela Mitchell brings us the final in a 2-part primetime news special.
We currently are seeing many more patients in our A&E department than we need to be seeing at this point in time.
According to Senior Medical Officer at the Maypen Hospital in Clarendon, Dr. Bradley Edwards, the hospital sees at least 40 people in the waiting area on any given day. However, 10% of that number could access healthcare services at health centers in the parish. As a result of this, overcrowding has become an issue.
It is a critical situation, to be honest, because our A&E department is not designed to house more than 8 patients comfortably in a bed in the observation area. Currently, we're seeing up to 39, 40.
And overcrowding also creates a space problem.
There are not enough spaces to accommodate people in the open area. Patients who are sick, who need a bed, end up on the doctor's examination table. So you have several doctors being confined to one space to examine patients.
Over at Falmouth Hospital, Acting Senior Medical Officer Dr. Abigail Crichton says the health center that is on the hospital premises does not have an area for dressing wounds, and so the accident and emergency department has to step in.
So even if the health center could develop a dressing room, that's one of the limitations it has, just doesn't have the space. So primarily infrastructure, they need space to be able to expand services, because at least dressing services can be done there, which is actually supposed to be done there.
Dr. Edwards also said that overcrowding also results in additional costs.
For example, they would probably have to employ another doctor to be able to cover the influx of patients that will be sent across from the health center if they were to see everybody in the waiting area that could be seen.
Shamala Mitchell, TVJ News.
Did politics play a part in the downfall of the coffee industry? That's the suggestion that was made by the Member of Parliament for St. Andrew East Rural, Juliet Holness, at a coffee symposium organized to discuss issues in the sector on Sunday. But that claim did not go down well with at least one other attendee, leading to a war of words. TVJ's Kirk Wright reports.
The symposium was organized to talk about coffee. And while the talks focused heavily on the ups and downs in the sector and what needs to be done to put it back on a solid footing, the discussion was not all cordial. That especially after this observation from Member of Parliament for St. Andrew East Rural, Juliet Holness, in whose constituency are many coffee farms.
I am here today to declare unequivocally that this administration is going to remove the politics from the coffee industry.
Mrs. Holness says politics shackled the Jamaica coffee industry, preventing the country from achieving the targets that were set for the international market. When Norman Grant, the managing director of the Mavis Bank Coffee Factory, took the platform to make his presentation, he disagreed with the assertion that politics was hampering the growth of the coffee industry. He says the coffee prices are set by supply and demand.
I don't see any politics in coffee. Coffee is driven by economics 101.
Mr. Grant says farmers must open their eyes to what's happening in the industry.
Understand the issues that are before us and don't be misunderstood or be led to believe that there is anything else that is dealing with the coffee market except demand and supplies.
The explanation from Norman Grant did not find favor with Member of Parliament for Western Portland, Darrell Vaz.
When Mr. Grant can stand up here and say there's no politics in coffee, it's damn foolishness him talking. Because every time there's an election and a campaign is going on, somehow, somewhere, you hear somebody on a platform say, when Labour Party come to power, coffee price going to go down.
Mr. Vaz says it's a disgrace that Mrs. Holness was the one to organize the coffee symposium and not the exporters and buyers of the commodity. And with that came this question.
You, the farmers, are their partners. Yes? They are dependent on you to be able to get the coffee to buy and to export. So the question I ask is whether they are coffee exporters or coffee exploiters.
Kirk Wright, TVJ News.
And time now for the responses from our friends on Facebook and Twitter, and Archie is at the smart board.
Thanks, Doreen. Here's our question today. We're asking, are you satisfied that the boundaries defined for the cockpit country will provide adequate protection for wildlife, plants and artifacts in the area? First comment from Chevon Scarlett, who says, yes, I am. Took the government too long, though. Needs to be more proactive with something as important as the cockpit country. Anne-Marie Nicholas says, I trust the relevant authorities in charge, know their work, and I'm listening out to hear a good outcome. I have no objections. Work on a project, work on to protect our wildlife, plants and artifacts. Nahima Bryan says, yes, I'm satisfied with the decision because other countries are protecting their wildlife. So why don't we do the same? And our final comment from Giovanni Heron, who says, yes, but the government should never have thought of messing with the cockpit country in the first place. That place is very important to Jamaica's history. Just leave it be. Keep your comments coming on Facebook and Twitter, facebook.com/televisionjamaica, and your tweets to @televisionjam. Business news and news from overseas after the break.
Managing Director of ARC Manufacturing, Norman Horn, is calling for the government to provide greater incentives to manufacturers through trade barriers. Mr. Horn, who was speaking at the ceremony where his company commissioned a new plant, says the protection is needed to allow manufacturers to create more jobs. Dashan Hendricks reports.
A $200 million investment marking the launch of ARC Manufacturing's newest plant, the product to be produced, wire mesh for the local and export markets. But and the investment as well as more to come, the ARC chairman Norman Horn pleading for more protection for local manufacturers. He says it's something other countries are doing.
We see more and more where world or global companies are advocating for greater levels of incentives in their domestic economy to produce. And those incentives comes in many forms, to include that of establishing trade barriers that provide incentives for your domestic manufacturers.
Mr. Horn says that there are little to no barriers to entry for manufacturers of building materials since 1994.
And I do believe that where manufacturers here, where we have the capacity to satisfy the domestic market, that there should be more barriers to entry for competing products. These barriers to entry are not necessarily seen as an advocacy for protectionism, but more so as incentives to put Jamaicans to work.
Industry Minister Carl Samuda, who was also in attendance at the function on Tuesday, says he saw products at ARC being produced which, based on the value added to them, do deserve protection, and that is being worked on.
However, I can promise you one thing. It is not a subject that has not been examined carefully by the Minister of Finance and myself. And we are almost, I say almost, we are almost at the stage where you will be given the kind of protection for what you're doing.
For the Business Day, I am Dashan Hendricks.
The Jamaican dollar continues to gain on the U.S. currency, pushing the price of the greenback to a new 15-week low. That price is $126.53, the lowest the U.S. dollar has sold for since August 2 last year. The price also represents a 5% appreciation for the Jamaican dollar after it sank to an all-time low in mid-September. The Canadian dollar is selling for $99.70. The pound sterling is going for $167.18, while the euro costs $149.72. In the meantime, the Bank of Jamaica has indicated that it will not be selling U.S. dollars to the market during the first 2 weeks of December. The central bank says that the decision was taken after market conditions indicated there is no need for it to add more foreign exchange to the market. The development follows an appreciation of the Jamaican currency over the last 2 months. Fosrich today released its prospectus indicating it will be offering over 100 million shares in an initial public offering IPO. The shares have been priced at $2 each, with Fosrich hoping to raise $200 million from the issue. Fosrich says it intends to use the proceeds to expand the company and repay debt. Stock and Securities is the lead broker for the IPO. And stocks ended mostly higher today, but losses in the price of the NCB Financial Group shares pushed the JSE index to decline by more than 589 points, while the junior market index gained 30. The winners of the day include Access Financial, Siboney Group, Express Catering, Jetcon, Kingston Wharves, Portland JSX, and Seprod. On the losing end were Barita Investments, Carreras, Knutsford Express, NCB Financial Group, and Supreme Ventures. And that's the business day. I'm Herman Green. Good evening.